Now this tale here is after we'd moved to Atlanta. Charles Burdett always, he wanted to go with us everywhere we went. So he had an old bulldog, and we had two little old outboard motors. We decided we'd go to Lake Lanier fishing. We took both of them little motors and put them on that one boat, you know. We'd run pretty good down through there, but fish wasn't a biting, and we was coming back to load them up and go home. We looked over and seen a sign that said speed boats for rent, $6 an hour. So we never been in one of them speed boats. So we pulled in there and pooled our money and rented that thing for an hour. Man, that's all it took too. We started out through there, man, that old bulldog hit up on the front. And, man, I reached, opened that throttle up, man, it took off. We'd never been in nothing run like that. So we headed down that lake, and there's a big old yacht come by making big waves, and we was in behind it. We'd jump them big waves, and I reckon that man on that yacht must have had a radio or something. We didn't know there's any law on the lake. Never heard of it. That he must have called them, because I looked up and it looked like two boats tied together. It had a petition in the middle and had a big old Mercury engine in it. I mean, it was kicking up the water, flying. He come down there where we was, and we thought he wanted to play chicken, you know, or something, you know. We didn't know who he was. We'd head right dead at him, you know, get right up to him. We'd turn that thing. That night of driving a turn on a dime. You could just reach over and get a drink of water if you wanted it, but he'd have to go way out there. Turn around and come back again. By that time, we was heading dead at him again. Well, he finally just gave up and left. We still didn't have no idea that it was a law or nothing. So we went up there, and the hour was about up, and we pulled in there, just turned that boat in, and that old gray-headed man walked down there and said, "You the one driving that boat?" I thought he was going to brag on how good I was doing, you know, but I said, "Yeah, man." He said, "You're under arrest." I looked him over good. He didn't have no gun or nothing on it. I figured that some old fogey done went to the pawn shop and got him a badge and stuck up there. If he'd had a pistol on or something, we'd just throwed our hands up and went on, but he didn't have no gun, and we just went over there and loaded a little motor on the back of the tailgate back there and tied them down, and then there's another one come down there. And I looked at him, he didn't have no gun on either. And I just got in there and cranked had a 50 Ford pickup, cranked it up and started easing off. Well, this is the third one coming. He's up in front of it trying to hold the truck back. And I just slid him out of the way. Now the other one, I reckon he had more sense than the one that was on the running board. He got out of the way. Well, that was a gravel road down in there to the boat dock end. We'd gone down that gravel road about 30 miles an hour. Old Charles says, "What are you going to do with that and hanging on the running board there?" I looked up at him. I said, "Oh, buddy," I said, "you got about 2 seconds to jump or I'm going to knock you off of there." And that fella jumped off of that thing. Turned end over end, out through that gravel, and then I got to wonder, well, maybe they got law on there. So we we went through the back roads all the way back to, we lived on Stewart Avenue. Marie was cooking supper, and I backed up on the trailer hitch of that trailer. She come to the door and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're going home." Said, "You can't go home, I got supper on the table." About that time, I just drug it off the blocks, and we brought it home and stayed a month or so till the thing cooled off. And well, if they'd have caught us, we'd still been in there, I guess. But they didn't for some reason. We come back to the mountains and stayed for a pretty good while. But anyway, that's another lesson we learned the hard way. The old bulldog got sick riding up on the front of that thing, and we was running scared for a month. Of course, that tag, although we didn't show him no credentials, nothing, but I'm sure he got that tag number, and they don't tell him what kind of tag we had on it back then. But anyway, we never did hear nothing from him. That's another school of hard knocks and a lesson that we learned the hard way. But I know people think we're the most stupid people in the world, but things we did, but you know, we knew everything there was to know about the woods and hunting and fishing and stuff, but we never got to go to town or nothing. Back when we was little, we just didn't know no better. Everything we learned it the hard way. But anyway, I hope they don't come and get me now. If they do, I'm gonna lie out of it. But anyway, that would be a good tale for old Dog Kelly and his buddy to hear, because that's a true tale. I think I might have told him that before. Now, let's see. Okay. Back when we were growing up, Harold more or less ruled the roost. We done what he said, or he'd peel your head with a rock, you know. But anyway, I can remember we played an old trash pile over there and found the Army helmet, the old steel helmet, and he told me that them things was issued to the GIs or the soldiers to turn a bullet, you know. If it hit them in the head, they'd reckon to turn the bullet away and wouldn't kill them. So he convinced me that that thing, you couldn't shoot through it. So he stuck it on my head out there, and I didn't have no idea that he gonna do what he do, but he backed off out there and shot me almost right above my eyes, between my eyes, but maybe a little off to the right. But man, that bullet went inside that helmet and run around and around, cut the sweatband out of that thing. Old helmet just fell over on one side. But that's how close we come to getting killed, you know. That bullet would have been straight. It went straight in the top of my head, but that bullet ricocheted inside and run around and cut, well, not all the head of the liner out of it, the sweatband or what hold it off up on your head, but it cut three of them out, and it went through that steel helmet. So I found out right quick that wouldn't turn a bullet. You can imagine what it'd do with a 30-06. This was just a 22 long rifle he shot me with. But anyway, I reckon God was looking at me. I didn't get a scratch. It just done damaged the old helmet, but I learned after that would not turn a bullet. It might have It hit it a very, very easy glancing blow, but if it won't turn a 22 bullet, it sure won't turn a big bullet. But I learned everything a hard way, and I learned another thing about Tommy Ledford. He was always bad to exaggerate or stretch the truth out or whatever. I don't know, but what he done to me after he got on with me, I just made a liar out of him. I said everything he told me's a lie. We used to go to the movie and see Mary Magdalene and Buster Crabbe and all them, you know, and Flash Gordon, and he knew I just lived to fly. I wanted to fly, you know, but he come over from his house one morning and he said, "Oh boy, I'm wore out. I'm just sweating all over." He said, I said, "Well, what have you been doing?" He said, "I've been flying all morning." He says, I was down on the Catawba River there and found a cave that Mary Magdalene kept her speedboat in. I drove it a while and he had an airplane there. Said, "I've been flying all morning." Said, this wore me out. I said, "Flying?" I said, how you been flying?" He said, "After I looked at that airplane in there, I just went home and built me one." Said, "I've been flying it all morning." I said, "Could you build me one?" He said, "Well, yeah, if you had a motor to put on it, you know." I said, "What kind of motor does it take?" He said, "Just a fan that you can turn when you leave the house. You have to pull it up on the house and come off with it." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. You and Harold get out there and build me an airplane. I know right where a motor's hanging. It's an old tractor fan or a T-model fan or something hanging over in Martin's barn and on a nail." So they nailed a couple slabs together and put a little tail on it, and then I had 2 wagon wheels on the front for wheels, and I couldn't wait. I run all the way over and got that thing and come all the way back, and they had the wheels on it and stuff, and took that old fan, T-model fan or whatever it was, and drove a big nail right in the end of that slab, you know. He said it's ready to go, ready to fly. Said, "We got to get it up on the house." I went up to the barn and got the plow lined off old mule harness and got up there. We pulled that thing all the way up to the top of that thing. And he said, "Now when you go off the end of that house, you be sure and turn that motor, you know." It said, "Don't fly too far to get used to it." I said, "I'm just going to fly here around the holler." And so I found out about it. Man, they turned that rope loose. That thing went off into that house, and I had that little fan humming. I mean, why, it went just as straight into the ground as it could go. Man, I was in the twilight zone there for a while. I couldn't think or nothing. Head ringing and roaring, and they kind of had to leave me around there about 30 minutes while I get back to my senses. And from that day on, I labeled him a liar. And everything he ever told me, I tell him, "I don't pay no attention to that. That's one of them Tommy Ledford lies." Anyway, that'll cause you to label somebody a liar, you know. The time back in, you know, you couldn't see through nothing. That's what you call learning a lesson through the hard knots or whatever it is. When you go through something like that, you know that ain't gonna fly when it goes off the end of the house. But that's just another one of them tales you had on my mind. I'll get on to another one. Okay, this one is about Daddy and Dave mostly. If they ever got together on the weekend, they'd always get in a fight. Either Dave would give Daddy a good whooping or Daddy would cut Dave or something or other. That's the way of life back then. If they got together, they's gonna fight. So I can remember Daddy, he done went and got him some Virginia Dare wine and Boer's ale. It's come in an old green bottle with a picture of a boar hog on the front of it. And he's already about 3/4 looped, drunk sitting there. He done got to the jabbering stage where he's jabbering, slubbering, wanting to jump on something anyway. Thing was whistling a little bit, but anyway, he was inside there jabbing and carrying on, and we heard Dave coming. He had all his groceries in a sled. Stowe Mercantile Store deliver them down to the road coming into the house, and Dave, he had to come to the house, and we lived on the next ridge over there. But the old sled road come right down through the house. Anyway, we know Dave, he's about drunk too. We heard him singing a coming thumb, yeah, yippee, yo. I don't know, seemed like he always wanted to be a cowboy or something, but anyway. They'd buy the sorriest old mule misfit thing that they could find. They didn't give over $4 or $5 for him. He had a big old club-footed mule. A club-footed mule is one that walks on top of his hoof. It's turned kind of under. But I looked up and seen him coming. That old mule, he's coming down through that big old boy mule, mule. Come to the house. Dave got off and tied him up to a big nail on the side of the house. He went in where Daddy was. Got to drinking that Virginia Dare wine, that Boer's ale with Daddy there. First thing I heard Daddy say, Homer said, "You think you mean, don't you?" He always seemed like he always started them things, but I remember hearing Dave, he said, Short said, "Let's don't get into it today." He said, "Go ahead and drink your wine and stuff." And Daddy said, "Well, I ain't wanting to get into it, but I thought I'd just tell you I can whoop you with one hand behind my back, and I know they're going to fight shortly." So, I always tried to find some way to break them up before the fight started. That copperhead, before it bit him, it broke up a fight before, but anyway, they'd all went to town and left us boys there by ourselves. And we didn't have no way of entertaining ourselves or nothing. But anyway, the only medicine that was in our house was a bottle of turpentine and a little can of chlorine salve. And that's all I ever knew to be in there as medicine in our house all the time we lived there. But they'd went to town and left us boys there. And we got that turpentine out there. We didn't know, you know, they did burn a dog's hind end up or what. But anyway, we put a drop or two in. We had two foxhounds or July Walker hound dogs, and we'd put a little of that turpentine, both them dogs, and a Harold's cat, I think. Anyway, and he had a little old dog. Anyway, we wound up putting it in 3 dogs hind end and 2 cats. And them things was out there just sliding around the house, just trying to rub it out, I guess. They just making a trail around through the yard there, sliding, trying to, I guess it's burning them pretty bad. But I shouldn't have done it, but I didn't know much better. But I talked old Fane into letting me put a little in his to make sure them dogs wasn't putting on, you know. And then there he is a squalling, carrying on. It's burning him too. You can't hardly rub it out to get it out once you get it in there. But when they come back in, they didn't have no common sense. He thought they all had rabies and put us in the house and kept us in there all evening. Said the dogs were mad dogs, he called them. They were mad all right, but it wasn't rabies. But anyway, this is a couple, about 2 or 3 weeks later, when Dave and Daddy was fixing to get into it in there. They had a person of carrying on, and Daddy was telling him he could whoop into one hand behind his back and all that stuff. And I told Fane, I said, they right now fixing to fight. I said, reckon that he had these mules tied up the side of the house there, and it just went to sleep, you know, just switching flies. And I said, reckon that turpentine work on that mule? He says, I don't know, it worked on me. But I said, slip in there and get it. Well, we'd used it all we'd used 3/4 of it. That old mule, he just standing there asleep. And I just raised that tail up and popped that bottle in that hind end. It just bubble, 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 bubble. Well, I pulled it out, there's a little bit left. He just hold that tail up and lollygagged around like that was feeling good, you know. Since I thought maybe I didn't get enough, I just poured the rest of it in there. Stood there about 2 or 3 minutes, and he's still standing there half asleep, just had that tail up in there, just lollygagging it around, you know. And a few minutes, that thing, first indication I seen that tail pick up speed. He said, and he got to where that tail looked like an airplane propeller. And he was looking back there trying to see what was burning him, I guess. A few minutes he couldn't stand that. He jerked that nail outside of that house and proceeded to go home. And had his groceries and stuff in that sled. Well, old road went by the house and went down the hill there and kind of across the branch and back up the other side. And I hollered in there and told him, I said, Dave, I said, your mule's running away. Well, that broke fired up. That's what we was after anyway. Broke that fired up and a mule chase was on. He come out there. He cut across the cornfield there. Where Daddy grew corn down that bottom, and he cut across there and had to jump the branch and the old sawbriars and honeysuckles in there, but he beat that mule out in the road. And we just little fellas then, you know. We seen him wind up. He'd worked at the sawmill all his life. And he is stout. Seen him wind up. He had left-handed. Wind up, and that old mule was coming up through there, up that old sled road, and he knocked it down on its front knees. And that turpentine wouldn't leave that mule down there. He come up with an iron braid. You could hear that thing braid half a mile out through there. And David trying to stop him, and he just run over him, sled and all, went right across his forehead up there and tore the hide off of it. Went on home. Well, I told Fane, I said, let's go over and see how that mule is faring, see what he's doing. He'd went over, and Dave, he'd made him a little slab shed cow barn or something there to keep old mule in. And that old mule had went as far in there with that sled as he could get. He kicked every board that foot had reached off of that thing. And bray every once in a while. Dave, he come over the next morning. He had one of his wife's pillowcase or something wrapped around that head. Daddy, both of them had a hangover. I remember he called Daddy Shorty. Hey, Shorty, says. And Daddy said, yeah, what? I'm going to trade this old mule. Says this thing went crazy. Said, look at my head. We run over it with a sled. Says, go and kick my barn down and braid all night. Said, I couldn't get the harness off of him until this morning. I never will forget what Daddy told him. He says, loco weed. He says, that thing had its belly full of loco weed. Well, it's another time that me and old Fane, we never did get to go nowhere or do anything. Harold would go with my daddy over to the beer joint, and he'd do a little tap dancing and stuff around there, and he always had money, but he never would give us any of it. Anyway, one time me and Fane went with him. We hid in the back of that old Model A Ford, and they got over there, and we stayed out in the car for a long time, and finally we got out, and they was in there drinking. You could smell that old beer and stuff. They playing they called it a piccolo, a jukebox, but we went in there to see them little bubbles that come up on each side of it. It's a pretty thing, but it was always playing some kind of honky-tonk music and jabbering and a talking and a arguing and a fussing. But you never forget the smell of a beer joint if you ever been in one. It's just smells rotten and rank. But anyway, me and old Fane, we was kind of slipping around in there, and we got set down by that jukebox or piccolo, and I just happened to kind of ease around back of it, and I looked there, and there's a quarter sticking out of it, 25 cents is sticking out of a little hole there. And I said, boy, we've hit the jackpot. There's a whole quarter. And I pulled that quarter out, and another one dropped down there. And I reached and got it, and another one would come down there, and it just kept working quarters out. We must have got 8 or 9 25-cent piece quarters out of that thing. And boy, we were rich. I mean, we had enough money to go to town and the dime store or whatever we wanted to, and you couldn't hardly spend a lot of money because stuff was cheap back then. But anyway, we hit the jackpot that night. We come home, they wanted to know where me and Fang got that money at. Harold did. We didn't tell nobody, but Harold already had some. We'd been tap dancing around a little bit or something, but man, we eat Marita bread and double colas and a big slab of bubble gum and all that just for $1.25. But we eat pretty good there for a day or two, and bought us an old Army gas mask, and I'd always wanted a pair of Army leggings. We bought them at the Army stores. I think they sold for 25 cents a pair or something, but anyway, we every once in a while we'd hit the jackpot on something or another, but I think God steered us back behind that thing. And I really believe that He, looks down and has compassion and mercy, for two little dirty kids, didn't have nothing. No hope for the future. But I truly believe it. I really believe that God looks down in certain situations, and blesses us with some joy in life, when there's very little that you could say was joy, but I think that night when we hit the jackpot at the beer joint, I think God had a plan for us. But I really appreciate things, looking back at the thing that God had to intervene, and do these things. But I got many, many, many tales to tell, but I don't know whether I'll ever get them told. But a lot of them are very sad, but there's a lot of them that's funny. But tonight that God blessed us with a little jackpot behind the jukebox, was a great blessing to us at that time. And I thank God for every blessing that He's ever blessed me with, and I tell Him every night, I thank Him for the thing that He's done for me, and for the strength and the hope, and for giving me 6 children and all these grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. And the happiest days in my life has been watching my children grow up here on this hill. They were all very ambitious and construct about anything. And that's my main jackpot, when God gave me a home and a wife and a family and children and grandchildren all my life. That's been my main jackpot. For it all, Lord, for we're solely dependent upon You. We know that you take care of your children and your people, and you've always supplied my needs, Lord, in my life, and put my life together and gave me a family and where I had no hope. Just thank you and praise you, not only for the family and the hope that you gave me, Lord, but for your Son, Jesus Christ, Lord, that gave us life and gave it to us more abundantly. Lord, I just thank you and praise you for everything, and thank you and praise you for each and every one here today, Lord, and thank you and praise you for blessing me with the opportunity to be here. I give thanks and praise to you, Lord, for everything, for I'm solely dependent upon you. And we thank you and praise you for the food in the hand that prepared it. And may we ever strive to glorify thy holy name. We ask it in Jesus' precious name. Amen.